So, welcome to West East by Coastal Poets of the Pandemic and Beyond. Hopefully, we are now in the beyond. The co-hosts are me, Lynn McGee, who is the founder of the series, Carolyne Wright, and Sandy Yannone. We mute everyone in the audience to start, and so please keep yourself muted obviously not if you're reading, but otherwise. And if you have something you want to say, please put your comments in the chat section. We usually have a pretty lively chat column, and the bios and information on how to get the books and website information, all of that will go into the chat column too. And as obviously, we're recording this, so if you don't want your face to show, you should stop your video. And you may have noticed that we have switched our time from Sunday to Saturday and from Sunday night to Saturday afternoon at least afternoon on the East Coast at 3 p.m. and noon on the West Coast. And we've done this because we thought it would be a better accommodation to international attendees. So I'm going to start by introducing Lynn McGee, our first reader. I know Lynn now for over 20 years, and she is consistently on point in her poems, which are full of visual detail. And in the case of her new collection, here it is, beautiful cover. I love the cover. From Broadstone Books, Science Says Yes, full of animals, the natural world, and even phenomena like artificial intelligence. And in these precarious times, what could be more important than the convergence of the poetic and the empirical? So, based on what we were talking about before the record button was pushed, will we survive? That is a very open question, but I think Lynn McGee's work offers hope and also humor. She writes, in today's witches share the powerful link between makeup and magic. I seize an infallible foundation. Among poems whose titles often read like headlines, a favorite of mine is How to Recover from a Happy Childhood, in which she writes, the past is a wrecked ship on the floor of the ocean, and we glide above it, taking the depths to find the moments that made us, which I think as poets we quite often, commonly, all of us do. So happiness is not the goal. In fact, she acknowledges that in another title, the pursuit of happiness could be making us miserable, a poem in which happiness is personified and in which happiness is even a bit smug. But I feel very happy today to have Lynn as a friend and very happy to be introducing her to you right now, Lynn McGee.
Thank you so much. There we go. Oh, okay, that's the cover. And I'll just say, since it's up now, Amadeo de Souza Cardoso was a painter. He was a Brazilian painter who died in 1920, and he painted this in 1918. He was 30 years old when he died. He had the Spanish flu, which was wildly spread around the world because of World War I. So, okay, we can. All right. Okay, are we in? Let's do the view, the kind of view where you can see the person reading. Okay. I'm just going to go through the poems, and I want to also say that most of the poems have headlines that are actually taken from news media and articles, and the titles did not generate the poems. I wrote the poems, and then I did an intuitive online search for articles that I felt resonated with the theme of the poem, and oftentimes in the process, I would have epiphanies about the poems and realize I didn't even realize what they were about when I was writing them. They would reveal themselves to me by the titles I discovered. And also the book is divided into sections: business and technology, style, climate and environment, and opinion, which I was just being a little playful, obviously, with the news, the headline, theme, and everything. Emotional AI is no substitute for empathy. Jesus knew it wouldn't be viruses that would wipe us out, wildfires, or nuclear war. He knew it would be a lack of empathy and tried to guide us in the other direction. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Now, AI has been made in our image, and it lacks what we lack. Scientists say, give it sensors placed in the environment, vulnerable to forces it can't control. Teach it suffering is unacceptable in any solution set. AI thrives despite its flaws. It carries on like any monarch, any god dogged by unregulated lust, hubris, greed. And then there are the humans, eaten by their children. How to fail your way to the top. In 6th grade, they taught us the dangers of smoking, and our class had a poster contest. We sat quietly grunting at our desks, crayons indenting white paper. I drew a man sitting up in bed, X's for eyes, the headboard a tombstone blaring RIP, and a caption warning, smoke in bed, wake up dead. I understood the illogic of waking up dead, but no other phrase gave the same punch. I was in love with the stylish impossible, a love that still inspires me to choose right, choose wrong. I marvel at the earth's frothy curve every time I fall. Differently alert. A rapport with machines gives autistic adults an edge. He doesn't make eye contact, the nurse reports of my nephew who is limp with sedation, lips slack, ventilator wheezing on his behalf, inflating his lungs in a rhythm both amiable and stern. He looks right past me, she says gently. He's probably unaware of his surroundings. We thank her, too polite to point out the monitor's appeal just behind her. Neon green zigzagging across its screen. We don't bring to her attention the splendor of syringe pumps stacked in a tower, the elegant tangle of cables, polished elbows of pipe. My nephew, who took the door off the stove before he could walk, who faked seizures to score an ambulance ride and be rolled into that luminous cavern of tools, stares past the nurse at an alluring silver dial, a corrugated blue tube, and is unbothered at being part machine now himself, almost fitting in. A taste for nostalgia, why food memories are so powerful. Lightning ignited a band of woolly oxen huddled beneath a tree, and charred meat hit the menu, sending more fuel to human brains and less to their slippery, churning gut. Fast forward a few millennia, and a child holds up a white plate, tilts it at her mouth to drink the blood from a steak, while 40 million cattle swing by their hind legs, entrails squeegeed into a trough, and 9 billion chickens flap in water laced with lightning, bringing this story full circle, back to the spark, the smoking flesh. Crickets crave grease, and so do we, gastric acid activated by a street vendor's skewered chicken on an open flame, the halal truck at lunch hour, charred hunk of land sizzling on a spit. And I would give anything to see my father at the grill, basting ribeyes, wielding the stainless steel tongs in one hand, frosty can of beer in the other. Tarantula in Black, spider named after Johnny Cash. Johnny Cash sang from the blonde hi-fi in our house, and he wore black for the poor and beaten down on the hungry side of town. He was the same age as my father, who was coltish and tall and cast his fishing rod with a quick, casual whip. You know what? I just realized the view. Let me do the speaker view. Speaker. Okay. All right. Someone who has the power to do so, name a just found streak of rock, a block of onyx pulling darkness, then releasing it as light. Name that rock after my father with his quiet flair. Name a new species of migrating tern, forked tail splitting with never before seen snap and fan. Name that species for my nephew with his unruly genes, his differently split ways. Let some newly discovered indissoluble speck, neither somber neutrino nor high-spirited electron, let that particle be named after his mother, my sister, her flash intact. Are you guys seeing me on the speaker view? Because I'm seeing Susana. Are you?
It doesn't, whatever you see is going to be different. Everybody can set their own view. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, I see you, Lynn.
Okay.
And I'm speaking, but I don't see me in speaker view right now. I just see you.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Because I don't see me in speaker view.
I see everybody.
And
I don't know if I'm supposed to.
I see dead people. So
No, that's because you're in gallery view where you see everybody.
Right. Okay.
Yeah,
All
yeah,
right.
but I put it in speaker view. So
yeah.
all right. Let me continue here. Sorry, I'm not very good at posting and anyway. Bioluminescence can be hours. When the shark looks up, he sees stars. Taurus gores the night sky. Ursus ambles toward morning. A squid glides past, legs trailing in the cold sea, underside lit with radiant bacteria the predators below confuse for constellations rippling across the sky. Humans know better. We scrape microbes from the luminous bellies of cephalopods, harvest a gel that lights a street. We fill a syringe, inject leaves with the sparkling genetic dust of eels, and birds veer from a park's fabricated glow. We clap on fireflies and trap them flaming in jars, and sometimes, in our haste, snuff out the life, but not the light, of insects whose green neon smears up to our elbows. Even as children, we seize what shines. How beauty rituals connect to mental health. The art and science of beautifying hair, skin, and nails attracts persuasive problem solvers, the quick thinkers among us, chemists who snap the light sensors in their retinas, read the color bouncing off a surface, and craft a strategy around it. In high school, there were kids who took college prep, boys with comb-backed hair in automotive and girls in cosmetology. Their beehive hairdos bobbed like planets above the lunchroom crowd. They wore nylons under their gym shorts, while other girls pulled up knee socks on the gymnasium's glossy court. We stayed out of each other's way, the potheads, the popular girls, the girls with teased hair, the cheerleaders, the ones who would never leave their hometown, the ones who would never return. We passed in the crowded hallway, polite as birds who sense their flock in a fog, whose wings never touch. I didn't know then that cosmetology employs the laying on of hands. A person feels heard when someone palpates their scalp. I just have a couple more. I think we're lucky that we don't live in a fire zone. And I know there are some people on in our group today who might live in a fire zone or closer to fire. But anyway, I just want to say I hope you don't have to deal with this, but so many do. Rampant wildfires once led to global mass extinction, scientists say. Could it happen again? If you drop water from the sky, it evaporates before it hits the flames. Silica in soil turns to glass. Zombie fires, the undead of fires, bide their time and erupt from underground like a rage-addled Persephone, clawing every tree with flame. If you miss your father, it's because he's not here to tell you the fires won't take us down. The first time I escaped death, I was 7, floating in a crouch, water skis pointed forward, both hands on the plastic handle, waiting to rise and cut my wake into a bass lake in Arkansas. The boat's motor revved. Rainbows of gasoline shuddered on the surface of the water. The orange tow rope made a wide loop that snapped around my waist, and I was yanked deep beneath the water's glittering surface. The last thing I saw was my father's face at the stern, his puzzled look. If you miss your father, it's because every buffer between you and danger is wearing thin. Fire follows the earth's curve. Firefighters load into helicopters and work 20-hour shifts. A smoke jumper parachutes to the jaws of hell. Pine needles hiss as they edge toward ignition. And the last poem I'm going to read is called Why Women Are Key to Solving the Climate Crisis. I want a raven to land on the railing of my balcony while I'm stretched out on the chaise lounge drinking a pale ale. I want the raven to move its gaze up and down my body, and when it determines I am neither food nor foe, I want the raven to push off and unfurl its opulent black wings and instantly forget me. Thank you.
That, I know all those poems already, and it's just thrilling to hear you read them again.
Thank you so
Lynn.
much. Thank you for your beautiful introduction, Susana, also. And of course, Susana and I have been in a writing group for many years, and you have seen generations of these poems too. So thank you so much.
So I'm going to turn it over to you now so you can introduce Barbara.
It's my honor to introduce Barbara Ungar. In the chat column, we're posting formal bios of the readers, so you can look for her formal bio in the chat column. But what I want to focus on right now is her new collection of poetry, After Naming the Animals, described by Martha Solano, who we're going to honor today, in a jacket blurb as a book that exquisitely reveals the scale and magnitude of our collective knack for soiling our own nest. And yes, After Naming the Animals does reveal that scale and magnitude, and it does so exquisitely. An early poem in the collection, As If, has a stanza that alludes to what I see as powerful undercurrents in the book. We cannot even count the ants or name all the animals before we wipe them out. Those lines set up for me, and maybe for you too, awareness of 3 things: the enormity of the task before us to reverse the damage we've done, what some called ecocide, the smallness of our ability to accomplish that task, and the vast and wildly misused power we wield as conquerors, the ones who name. Those 3 concepts touch me personally as the work of Barbara Ungar and my own work and that of many others grapples with our place in this 6th mass extinction. Another thing that draws me to the work of Barbara Ungar, who I discovered about 5 years ago, is its elegant authority, which I read at times as feminist, in that she is not seeking to please the reader or temper her opinions. An example of that tone is in the poem Perimenopause Now, which refers to a Hitchcock movie in its open and says, I'm watching the birds for comfort. I just love that line. It's like, I'm watching the birds for comfort. And if you don't like it, tough, I love that. After Naming the Animals, Barbara Ungar's most recent collection, also acknowledges that writing about extinction and animals and natural phenomena can sometimes cause a writer to wrestle with a sense of futility and the moral challenge of prioritizing. I'm thinking in particular of this stanza in the poem 22 Extinctions in 2021. While the bombs rain on Ukraine, why do I mourn these small shapes by most of us unseen, silently filtering streams or pollinating blossoms? And then the poem answers that question. They were our little sisters and brothers, whether we ever met them or called their names. I felt so sad when I read those lines. They really touched me. The last poem in the collection, Thought Cloud, generates itself almost playfully and suggests it will not tolerate the romanticizing of the natural world. The clouds are not cotton batting in the jewel case of the stars. The clouds are not sledges of the gods. In the end, that poem quietly proves that seeing clearly and honoring truth is the most romantic thing a poem about clouds or anything else can possibly do, asserting in its final lines, they are not translatable, they cannot stay. Please welcome Barbara Ungar.
Thank you so much, Lynn, for that beautiful introduction. Thank you for asking me here, for coming up with this idea. While you were reading, there's so many overlaps in our work. I wanted to throw out what I was going to read and read things like my tarantula poem for your tarantula poem. And then I'm not reading any of the poems that you mentioned in the introduction, but I'm just going to stick with my list because I know the timing works. So sorry about that. And as I mentioned earlier, I want to start with a poem by the wonderful Martha Solano, who left us on Monday. She would have been part of this reading from her latest book. This one we call Ours, referring to our planet. It's called Just Before 25 Fourth Graders Crouched Beneath the Table to be Instructed on the Imperatives of Silence and Calm. She has these great long titles. That's the whole title, and it runs right into the poem. So here we go. Just before 25 fourth graders crouched beneath the table to be instructed on the imperatives of silence and calm, I was teaching a lesson on haiku, sharing a photo of a frog, an example from Basho, telling them they no longer needed to count on their fingers 5, 7, 5. Beginning to turn their attention to the world outside the classroom, to a cherry tree in full bloom, asking them to watch the petals breaking free with each small gust, to consider what the petals resembled. Javier waved, "Snow." Addison wrote, "A forest is scary." Some were whispering. One was confused. One asked, "Do we have to?" Then we were quiet, like the petals falling to the ground. Martha Solano, and she has 2 new books coming out, Terminal Surreal, which is her account of her dying of ALS, coming out with Acre Books in October, and her new and selected Last Train to Paradise. I mean, the titles are just phenomenal, and that's going to be from Saturnalia. I'm not sure when, so. And with that, I'm going to launch into my own after naming the animals. And I'm going to start with what's sort of a central poem in the collection called Weight. It's based on a scientific study. Scientists somehow managed to weigh everything alive on the planet and come up with these amazing statistics that inspired this poem, which amazingly was in Scientific American. And it's in 2 parts. Weight. 1, Homo sapiens, or 96%. We think the world belongs to us, but scientists have weighed life on Earth, which turns out to be mostly trees. Only 1/100th of the living swim the 7 seas. 1/8 are buried. Bacteria. Underground bacteria weigh more than 1,000 times more than us. Even worms outweigh us, 3 to 1. So does the lowly virus. Humans comprise a mere 100th of 100th of the living, 0.01%. Yet we have paved the earth with chicken bones. Weep into your soup. Under 1/3 of birds fly free. The rest, poultry. Garden turned feedlot and slaughterhouse. We, Homo sapiens, 1/3 of all mammals, keep almost 2/3 to eat, mostly cow and pig. Only 4% left for all wild animals, elephant to shrew. Half Earth's creatures have vanished in the last half-century while we've redoubled. Even half gone, plants outweigh us, 7,500 to 1. 2, the other 4%. I let the cat out. I felt the cat hunkered in her fur, eyes bright in the dark, amidst all the wild things crouched in their night, tiger to mice, the tiny remnant left, each one fighting for its life. So Lynn was talking about what do we do? How do we survive? And two of the places that I go, number one is science. And I like to take the very big picture. And that was something that Martha loved to do too, as well as the very tiny and microscopic. And then I guess you'd call it mysticism, whether it's Jewish mysticism like Kabbalah or in this poem, Eastern mysticism. So there's a reference to a Hindu concept of kalpas, very vast lengths of time. And then the last line is a quote from a Buddhist book on the Heart Sutra. So this is called Average Monkey. It's also in 2 parts, but it's not too long. And the epigraph is from Stephen Hawking, who said, "We are just an average breed of monkeys on a minor planet of a very average star, but we can understand the universe." 1. Remember sea glass, sandwiches and wrapped in waxed paper? A seahorse twines its delicate tail around a pink plastic Q-tip. We've made 1 billion elephants worth of plastic. Plasticos, pliable, from placine to mold. Or detritus descried in the deepest bellies of lanternfish, rakery beacon lamps, stout saw pallets, scaly dragonfish. When my father began to hallucinate, he saw heads in the dishwasher and cupboards. "I know they aren't real," he said, "but sometimes I wonder what they like to eat." 2. What to do with this dread? Take the long view. Kalpas, unimaginable eons, the void. Oh, a mouth exhaling. First, a universe, ultimately, nothing. Everything that feels so important to you isn't really. Each atom, 9,999 parts empty space, 1 part vibrating energy. Things exist, but they are not real. I don't know if you find that comforting, but I do in some strange way. From there, I'm going to leap to the sort of where the title of the collection comes from. Call Me Eve. So it's a redoing of the Genesis myth of naming the animals, but backwards. Call Me Eve. At the end, as in beginning, after naming the animals, we banish ourselves from the garden. So many names, so many tongues, all of them meaning goodbye. Goodbye, meaning all of them. So many tongues, so many names. From the garden, we banish ourselves after naming the animals, as in beginning, at the end. It just asked me to confirm that I'm speaking English. That's never happened to me before. What did I say? So the middle section of this book then looks at very individual species, most of which are endangered, and some of which are just really bizarre because people knew that I was doing this. And so I think Nancy White sent me this particular one. It's called My Head and I. And the epigraph is from The Tenant. The Trelkovsky says, At what precise moment does an individual stop being who he thinks he is? Cut off my arm, I say, me and my arm. But if you cut off my head, would I say, me and my head or me and my body? What right has my head to call itself me? What right? My head and I. The sea slug, Elysia marginata, is a lovely celadon with black and white spots. While lizards have breakage planes so they can self-amputate their tails to escape, these sea slugs have breakage planes on their necks so they can self-guillotine. If we lose our heads, no body survives, though the tower is said to be haunted by Anne Boleyn carrying her brave head, and here the headless horseman's said to ride. The slug's head looks like a tiny green giraffe's, the body a folded philodendron leaf. The jagged neck edge smooths in a day, and the head begins to inch on its own, bowing to touch its old body tenderly with amber horns, as if in farewell, the way elephants mourn their dead with eloquent trunks. The black-edged leaf body quivers and closes. The heart keeps beating there for months until it decomposes. A gland in the slug's head stores chloroplasts from algae to keep it alive by photosynthesis, while a new body grows like a leaf from the cut neck. The new heart starts beating in a week. Long ago, in a dream, I removed my head in a bathroom stall and hung it like a purse by its long brown hair from a hook on the door. When I emerged, I carefully balanced my head on my neck till I could look in the mirror and fix it with a hat pin, hoping no one would notice. And then I'm going to read the last animal poem about an endangered species. It's the last jaguar, or jaguar, as the Brits say. I love that. The last jaguar. School kids in Tucson named the last jaguar standing El Jefe, the boss. He prowls the Santa Rita Mountains, an immigrant from the Sierra Madre. The last jaguar before him, Macho B, lured with female scat, killed in a botch job in 2009. The last jaguar in Texas shot in 1948. The last female jaguar in the US shot the same year as JFK. The jaguar god of the night, lord of the underworld. In Mexican Spanish, the jaguar is el tigre. Jaguar comes from the native jaguar, he who kills with one leap. Jaguars avoid and rarely attack us. Solitary, elusive, their rosettes help them disappear in dappled deep forest light. Hard to spot, let alone count. El Jefe can be known by his unique coat. Where jaguars once roamed the Southwest freely, El Jefe hunts alone. The wall would keep females out, dooming El Jefe to be the very last. The SAA people of the Amazon say, the jaguar only shows himself to you when you are ready to see him. And just a couple more. This one is AP Physics, inspired by my son who was taking that class. And it also has an epigraph from a movie, Smiles of a Summer Night by Ingmar Bergman. A very old woman, Mrs. Armfeld, says this. One can never protect a single human being from any kind of suffering. That's what makes one so tremendously weary. AP Physics. Your son says, did you know you exert a gravitational pull on everything in the universe, and everything in the universe exerts a gravitational pull on you? And that's what makes you so tremendously weary, you think, until you learn there's no such thing as gravity, but rather space-time curves like a stretchy fabric, and things roll towards one another like balls that follow grooved tracks around an incline. And then again, that Einstein was wrong. There is no time or space at the tiniest level, just quanta weaving the net of what is. Though these are but crude metaphors, as you know from fasting, eating peyote, or giving birth, but which, to survive on the gross scale of a body, you must forget. And this, too, makes you tremendously weary. Or perhaps it's just motherhood and age, which also don't really exist. And I'm going to close with Dream Voice, which is based on an actual dream. There's a few references. Visible Woman, does anybody remember her? It was a transparent doll, and you could see the veins and arteries and, various organs. She's in there. Walt Whitman is in there. Various weird animals from the center section. And then at the end, I sort of mess with a quote from Ram Dass. Instead of God, in the Jewish tradition, we don't speak the name of God, so we might say the name instead, or the unnameable, or nameless, which is what I use here. So this is Dream Voice. In a mirror, you see your human shape, swathed in black lace, translucent and pulsing like a jellyfish, heart and womb shining through like the visible woman's, wondrous as the piglet octopus with its crown of tentacles and saucer eyes, or the pocket shark shaped like a palm-sized sperm whale, the caterpillar fringed like a Mardi Gras float, or Uncle Walt marveling at how his ankles bend. Never worry about beauty again, a voice says. You too are the nameless in drag. Thank you.
Wow. Oh, I love that reading so much. Adore that reading. Barbara, the sheer span of your images populated throughout all the poems. I mean, vast, vast, vast. And I think we saw it in Lynn too. And I think that's what happens when you go to science, the marriage of language and the language of science is just so much more expansive. And I mean, look at where we went. We went from seahorses to sea glass to jaguars to Anne Boleyn, Ram Dass, and Walt Whitman, gravity and peyote, and the visible woman. They all exist, but they are not real. Fantastic. Thank you so, so much. The book, everyone. The book, everyone. Get the book after naming the animals. Oof, fantastic. Well, because I'm double tasking here for just a slight moment. I'm going to show Sarah's cover first from Mother Octopus in my horrible way that I am screen sharing today. There it is. Beautiful, beautiful cover, which here in my room, I have these blinds that also are casting like little circles of light, almost as if it's another tentacle of the octopus on your very cover that's sitting of the book that's sitting right beside me. It's an odd optical illusion. Well, let me go now to what I would like to say about this extraordinary book, Mother Octopus. And first, let me just say I am beyond humbled and honored to introduce to you Sarah Giragosian and her stunning, stunning poetry to you. I'm going to focus on one particular poem, and I'm not sure it's a poem she's even going to read. But in her poem, Foreign Bodies, the speaker urges, don't forget the vocational hazards of magicians and sword swallowers. Well, as a poet myself who has just completed writing a chapbook about the Hartford Circus Fire and has a series of poems in the voice of Bess Houdini, Sarah's poems catch my attention with their surprising phrasing and observations at every turn. And isn't that, one of the tools of poetry, the turns, the voltas? She does in her poetry exactly what she continues to write in Foreign Bodies, taking the object and turning it into subject and making these new trinkets, these poems, sing. I would not be surprised to learn that when Lynn McGee literally handed me Sarah's book so I could prepare to introduce her, that she knew exactly what she was handing over, handing me a book that I needed in my hands, that I needed in my head, and that I needed in my heart. Mother Octopus is her latest collection. Her debut collection, Queerfish, received the American Poetry Journal Book Prize in 2017, and Black Lawrence Press published The Death Spiral in 2020. I'm about to buy a book that she co-edited, Marbles on the Floor, How to Assemble a Book of Poems, because I'm trying right now. And I have a good feeling she's got some magic to share with me. But back to Mother Octopus for a moment. Her press, Middle Creek Publishing and Audio, publishes what they name the literature of human ecology. If we ever needed a collection in our hands that takes its kaleidoscopic courage of bringing deeply felt humanity, biology, and ecology together prismatically and lyrically, this is your collection. And as Isabel Sorel Campos reminds us in her blurb on the back of the book, quote, these poems, Mother, are losses. I can't think of a better collection to be hearing from on this day in history to prepare us for the tomorrows of our future and the literal tomorrow, Mother's Day. Then Sarah Giragosian's Mother Octopus, would you please join me in welcoming this poet of virtuosity? And thank you, Lynn McGee, once again, for putting the book in my hands.
Sandy, I'm so moved by your introduction. Thank you so much. I'm really touched. And I want to thank my co-readers as well, Lynn and Barbara. Barbara, I've been a fan of your poetry for many years. We share kindred interests, and your reading is gorgeous. And Lynn, I'm so happy to get to know your poetry better. Just beautiful poems. I think we all share a kind of feeling for a kind of creatureliness, an interest in animals and their resilience and powers and beauty. I'm going to start with a poem called Fowl at Large, and I'll just make a note. I mention a kite in this poem. I'm referring to a kite as in a raptor, typically found in the southern states, not usually found in New York, where I reside, where I did in fact see a kite. Fowl at large. What honing dial set awry, or false hunch, or storm of the century drives the accidental bird or dreaming poem to surface? As for me, I had disavowed hope's candle to egg devotions, spike-heeled the idea of someday. Speaking of chicks, newbies, and baby tortoises, if you sentence a beehive to a bell jar, those hourglass bees will one day spill like lava over every lip and crevice. I swear, I've seen those little torpedoes of joy and sting meet and greet every goldenrod, every marigold from here to long after cocktail hour. like a cacophony of cats. So many eyes without apology, screaming their heads off. I've lost all sense of grace. Thank God. My thirst is deeper. It shrieks for that kite, slicing through unseen geographies, lost, windstorm dazed, her compass needle wild as a roulette wheel. Yeah, in these fraught political times, I've been trying to read more love poems. So in this poem, it's called Lost Girls, and it's based on a dream I had that all the letters of the alphabet, with the exception of L, were intact, but the letter L disappeared from the alphabet, which presented a problem because my partner's name is Elise, and so I wasn't able to communicate with her to name her. It's called Lost Girls. In my dream, L is gone. Loop, light, lemon, and all the words that include the letter L have been culled from the alphabet, erased. Or perhaps they never existed, or were recanted, or, like a pair of gloves, were simply mislaid. It's hard to know the field of logic, the barriers of the possible in a dream world. And I find myself in a place where no one remembers or speaks the words that include the letter. Imagine the dominion of L exiled from consciousness. Leaf, blood, lungs, water lilies. Those tongue to palate exertions, those down to earth nouns no longer flow from my mouth. Imagine the children reciting HIJKMNOP. Imagine the elisions, the L's lost. Elles ont disparu. The girls, I wish to tell you, are missing. But neither my mother tongue nor your adopted one, our common one, converges any longer. Imagine trying to say, I love you, in an alphabet that has never conceived of love or of wildness, swaddle, pull, or pillow. No leaves trembling above. No lull of the lullaby in the nursery. No longing, no ebullience. An austere dictionary. How do I say that I'm writing you a love letter? In phonology, L, if pronounced before a vowel, is light, but after dark. Say lamp, say fell. Bereft again of the letter that I could hardly pronounce as a child. Mary has a yiddle yam, I would sing in full-throated trochees. I could not even explain my lisp to you, my L's plundered from my language in my parallel dream world. The bull's eye of a word well selected in the right order. That satisfaction, I worried, I might never feel again. What a strange aquarium of a world inside a world that I float in. L's on my lips, but out comes bubbles. And you, Elise, are a different person, I feel. A woman living inside the perimeter of a 25-letter alphabet. But good news, there is resolution because I did have to write a resolution to this. I had to communicate with Elise. So this poem is called Hallelujah. Do birds dreaming mid-flight ever rouse themselves into a world with an unfamiliar sky and an equivocal view? Shocked by an uncanny topography, how do they stay aloft in those moments? Or is it just humans that pick apart the seams between dreaming and waking? And what ineffable creatures ruffle the edges of my dreams? What tag-along animals, if not birds, would lead me out? At the first splinter of morning light, from the cave of your mouth flies a song. Hello, love. The words pool and lap at my mind, and I can hear an echo in my ear of some vestigial syllable tugging me into consciousness from sleep. On waking, L appears like mana. Part of our mutual lexicon again, it has been restored to the language. I love you, I say again and again, and you wonder at my exuberance. I locate us on the same map. We share the same longitude and latitude once again. Clasped together through the same long, luminous morning hours, we laugh, we laze, and make love in disheveled sheets, and I can sing your name again. Elise, I say, you're all liquid in my mouth. This is to the source. Take my hand. Will you bring me to the source, to the river's mouth? If I rise with the river, I'll be flooded with cattails and runoff. If I run off with you, do you know a place beyond the arm of the state? It's getting late. Lead me to the heartland or a body of water, to my earliest language, so we can pledge to soil, seed, and air, indivisible in a sparrow's first subsong. What if all's related? The quality of light, the Superfund site, the lump in the breast, the songbird sighted too early in spring. In the smog, the only sunrise that can be seen stalls out on a TV screen. Perhaps somewhere else, somebody's birthright is sunlight, but in this big gulp country, my body is an artifact of industry, a trial, a test. PCBs in the bloodstream, exposure to mercury and lead dioxins. My fertility is uncertain, and that wheeze you hear could be a symptom, could be a prickle of grief. It's getting late and the garden's flooded. Its dredgings speak of sacrifice, broken teeth of harrow, patented seeds and chrysanthemum, engineered blue. When the time comes, we can count on our kind to reroute the river upstream, to remake whole cities rather than ourselves. It's getting late and the heat's unseasonable, but season, which meant once a proper time, a sowing, now means scrounging for another morsel of land, an ice floe to rest on, or a gesture of hope. A spell of rain, or the essential play of bees in a forest field of strawberries. It's getting late, the Arctic's burning, and you cannot coax methane back under permafrost. The mush spits up seal skin boots, seeds and microbes, mammoth bones and pathogens, viruses that will follow the dotted lines of love. How does this song go? Is it told in a whisper with a crack in the voice? If you tilt your ear to the earth, what do you hear? It's getting late, and the whales are singing a little flat. So loud, the acoustics of cracking icebergs, they may be changing their pitch to be heard. Sandy mentioned my poem, Foreign Bodies, which originally was going to be the title of this book. But a few months before the book went to press, I discovered Kimiko Han's gorgeous poetry collection, Foreign Bodies. So I'm glad that I discovered it in time. It's a beautiful collection, but I knew I had to kind of change gears and retitle my manuscript. But yeah, so this is a poem that was inspired by the Chevalier Jackson collection at the Mutter Museum in Philadelphia. Foreign Bodies. Swallow the bait. Face this cabinet of curiosities, of freak accidents, the whatnots of disaster. Inedibles ingested by toddlers and pica patients, hairpins and chestnuts, tacks and buckles, bottle caps and tooth roots, keys and doll's eyes, guts and grimace. Imagine the labyrinth of airway and foodway, the alleyways and cul-de-sacs of pharynx and larynx, trachea and lungs, all the ways the swallow can land you in a tangle of trouble. Don't forget the vocational hazards of magicians and sword swallowers, the safety pin-lipped distractions of mothers, the stowage spaces of toddler mouths, and all the pins and knickknacks, brooches and backtalk, trinkets and whistles a preschooler can blend into her being. These trinkets sing. Take this object, turn it to subject. Incorporate this craving. Careful, though, of windpipe. Don't let it go down the wrong pipe. Pass the water, pass the scope and forceps, and holds tight to your penny. There are copper and flora aplenty in you already. I'll just read one more. And this is called Love Song of the Fig Wasp. The ocean aches for a lush moon. I, near invisible, crave the flowers inside the fig. That sweetness sings and swells, pink light calling to my core. That solo flight in, all consumed, I push and pry inside tight quarters. Snip! The flesh snags my forewings, takes the pinpoint needles of my antenna, everything. No matter. The moon gives and takes away its light. The fig, too. New-bodied, more ant than wasp, I creep around the fruit's pips, bigger than my eyes, making a home inside pulp, bursting with clusters and clusters of flowers, ecstasies upon ecstasies. I lay caches of eggs within the span of that fruit, swipe and spread pollen like wallops of jam. Call it the largesse of pollinators. Call it a future trust. Yes, I will die locked inside that paradise, and my sons, once mated, will too. But my daughters, they'll carry on what I started. Dressed in pollen, they'll escape, find the next fig, slice it open. You won't find their secrets. The juice will spill open your lips. Thank you so much for listening.
Wow, that was fabulous. That was just fabulous. I was there for every word. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Let's see. So, yeah, let me just collect myself for a moment here. I mean, I'm segueing into the next part of our program, which is the open mic. Everybody can unmute themselves. But nobody signed up for the open mic that I'm aware of. But let's just take a moment and bask in the afterglow of Sarah's work, and then just so many beautiful moments.
Triple afterglow. These were three
Like
fabulous
triple.
readings.
That's what I'm saying. They kind of just they slid into each other.
Yes,
They just kind of like undulated with each other. They were just in like beautiful synchronicity. Mm.
There's so many poets in the audience. I know most of your work, and nobody has signed up for the open mic that I'm aware of, unless I missed it in the chat column. If you want to read read one poem in the open mic, just type your name in the chat column. Any takers?
Now the last time we did this.
The Lisas, the two Lisas, got to have a Lisa. You can't have an open mic without at least one Lisa.
Particularly after we talked about the L.
Yeah, yeah. Let's get those Myra. Brad, I know you're not a poet, but I can't believe you never tried.
Well, Carolyne volunteered to read.
Okay, okay, Carolyne.
Well, I'm one of the curators, so that's kind of not fair, but
Well, I think you might be the only open mic. Kate, you sometimes read an open mic
somebody
that I've
read.
been to.
Margot, I
We
volunteer
have Margot.
Margot.
Wait, Peggy, you guys, and
I
nobody.
volunteer Kate. I volunteer Brad Kenyon, whom I don't know.
The last time we put Elaine Sexton on the spot, I said,
Absolutely.
can I make a recommendation? And I did, and then she read a poem. So I think it's great. I think it's great to ask a person and
how
can
about
turn it
Carla
down.
Cortez and Suzanne Cleary
Peggy Ellsberg. Don't you have any of your work
and
with
Michelle
Margot, you have
Baptiste? I'm just naming
you
people.
have Peggy's
Anybody.
book, I'm sure, at your house.
Poems on me.
You don't have any poems on you?
No,
Margot has your book, I'm sure.
I'm not so sure.
No, I haven't. It's a question of where it is. That's the problem.
Okay.
In my messy house somewhere. But I just don't have any books down here, so I
Does
could.
anyone have one? I met this poet last week in the Grolier Poetry Bookshop in
Oh.
Cambridge,
Wonderful.
which, you know, just go there and hang out there for an hour, and the most extraordinary things will happen because you don't know who's going to walk through the door. You don't know what books are going to leap off the shelf. You just don't know. You know, the ghosts are there. It's all happening. So this poet comes in and he says, "Well, now do you memorize your work?" And I was like, "You know, I have only got one in my head. I've got half of another." He's like, "Really? That's the thing to do, is to try to memorize as many of your poems as possible." So if there's anybody in the room who's got one in their head, that's who I recommend.
Okay, Kate signed up, first of all. Kate did sign up, and Lisa Andrews always performs her poems.
She
It's
had to
so
leave.
compelling.
So I suggest we hear from Kate and Carolyne and
Okay.
close it out.
And if anyone else signs up, so let me start the open mic then. Here, open mic shall begin. So why don't we start with, where's Kate on my screen?
Here I am.
There, okay. Kate, how do you pronounce your last name?
Wegerzen, a fine Baltic wine.
Okay, Kate Wegerson, a fine Baltic wine. Okay, Kate Wegerson, please read for the open mic. Thank you.
Okay, so can you hear me?
Yes.
Mhm.
That's wonderful. Very seldom is it difficult for people to hear me. I was a cheerleader for 7 years.
Mm.
They hid my megaphone.
Microphone, wow.
My poem is dear to my heart, and it's called Canyon de Chelly, Arizona. Blue, clear skies, keen eyes navigate descending narrow trails, dried riverbed, welcoming winter warmth. Distant view across the Arroyo, Diné people descending narrow trails, carrying harvesting baskets on their heads. A terraced garden, tall corn stalks join an orchard. An adventurous spirit I cross, overcome, cloaked into a sudden chill, cliff dwellings in the shadows, yielding dark western clouds billowing. Lightning bolts ignite the sky. Diné people no longer in view. Ground thundering under my feet. Whoa, run fast, back to the other side. Horses are galloping around the bend, racing ahead of swelling wall of water, folding over, crashing in, not to be trampled. Agility, fear born, my fingers gnaw at the rocks of the ascending cliff, hooves pounding past me, escaping flood wall, dissipating every majestic color stampedes.
Mm. Thank you so much, Kate. That was wonderful.
I was there.
Yeah, it sounds like you were there. Now we were there.
Yay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Carolyne Wright.
Yeah, thank you so much, everybody. I'm so happy to be here, and so happy that there are two books of mine that happened to be here that I gave to my friend here a little while ago. So this book is A Change of Maps. It came out from the wonderful Lost Horse Press in 2006, but I think much of it is still relevant. And since the theme of the day has been nature, the sciences, and you know, preservation of this planet. I'm going to read a poem called Darwin's House at Down, Closed Fridays. I was with a friend of mine who was he was a professor of philosophy, but he was really into the history of science, and he'd been studying Darwin for a long time. So we made it our business to get to Darwin's house, which was in the village of Down in southern England. But the day we arrived, it was closed. So I had to write this poem more or less from my imagination, and then we were able to go there another day. So it has an epigraph from Charles Darwin himself. It is the end, I think it's the last line of On the Origin of Species. Whilst this planet has gone cycling on according to the fixed law of gravity, from so simple a beginning, endless forms, most beautiful and most wonderful, have been and are being evolved. We knew for whom was built this special shell and for whom kept. We knew the dates, the names. We'd pictured ourselves for years, sitting at the master's desk, walking his routes between fields beyond the wrought iron gates. Even stones along the paths, napped flint chipped from walls by the hedge trimmers, had mental analogues. We'd reasoned so long from other thinkers' universals that only the unlisted quirky schedules of English country houses could cancel out our plans like a cold tide over Permian bogs. Anomalous as the hours on the plaque were our thoughts, the work of some thick-brained sublunar hack setting off half-cocked to prove the obvious. We trusted to luck and the survival of the 40-hour week. We'd failed our direction-seeking species. All day we wandered the village's hedge-blind lanes, where magpies fussed in the dying hawthorn's crowns, and ponies put their ears back in alarm at unseen guard dogs patrolling the farm, and only we had no natural enemies. What question had we not adapted to our failure? We turned at the rusted warning signs, no wiser than if the door had opened on glass cases of fossils, faded letters, specimens, a study restored to its original untitled clutter. And some neighboring lord's cache of stuffed exotic birds, iridescence on their wings, pristine where autumn's unfaked sunlight falls. Squinting at the fact's dusty particulars, as scholars do, we would have missed the truth of all small, complicated objects under glass, our interest trapped in its own success, like a band of shaggy Pleistocene ponies whose cliff-top pasture shrinks into the surrounding arms of ice. This was our life, the bones say. No matter the brain's methodic fever. The laboratory in ruins, the big elms gone, we drove off past the no admittance doors, back to our childless fin de siècle rooms, wondering what would become of our kind, taking the fixed laws so lightly, rushing in ever smaller and now ever larger cars down the widening flow of motorway as we matched names on the maps to houses older than our country, as if scraps of someone else's history could make us whole, a species teetering at the top of its form, where evolution stopped a moment, then moved on. Thank you.
Epic. That's the word I want to use. Epic. 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 And an epic reading today. If no one else wants to read a poem, and I hope folks have been like monitoring the chat to see, then I'm going to read a poem. So someone else read a poem, please. So I won't read a, you don't want to hear me read a poem.
I want to read a poem.
Yes,
Me.
go right ahead.
Okay.
And thank you.
It is published in Sparks of Calliope. It is entitled Memories. Our love mixes with seaweed, a sweet memory. Sprinkled with salt, it grows between the breeze and the hurricane, the fruit of an inner struggle. The green waves crash in a murmur that cools the warm and ancient sand, limit perception. New tides of change cast our minds back, the courage to exist. In the space between ancientness and nowness, our perfect love is eternal, a song for a dance, an invisible one, in the wave-like movement on the shores of our hearts. We can feel our holy angels, wounded wings, echoes of a distant cry, in every salty breath a prayer and a promise. Between freedom and serfdom, we fathom our dodecahedral geodesic spiritual sphere out. The reality is circumjacent, contiguous eyesight. The voice of God becomes an echo to inhabit the twilight world. Thank you.
Beautiful, Marietta. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
So glad. All right. We're gonna do like once, twice, 3 times. No? All right. I'm gonna read one. I'll read one. That'll be 5, and then we'll be good. Okay. A little recommendation for first, though. Always have a poem on deck at all times. The world right now needs our poems more than ever. So always have a poem ready, at the ready. I'm not, yeah, okay, I'll stop. So this is a new poem, a pretty new poem. And there's a few folks that you will probably recognize. Elizabeth Bishop and Sappho make cameos. Okay. And tomorrow's Mother's Day, and it begins with my mom. So it's great. So the poem right now is called Massachusetts. My mother, born and raised here, became more herself whenever she remembered her first state of being. And most of my greatest loves resided here, including my last, way out west. So much so that I felt the illusion that she lived in my home state of Connecticut. Sometimes a state harbors a beauty, sometimes a delusion of memories, all in its merciless name. A scrabble of letters, unsure about its origins, until reoriented on the heart's ragged map. Worcester-born Elizabeth Bishop declared Florida as the state with the prettiest name. But I believe it's Massachusetts, with her quartet of lowercase s's and a pair of double consonants, so satisfying rolling off the tongue like a lover's riveting name never anticipated, the fully stunning surprise of her arrival when you least expect Massachusetts to give you anything more than what it already betrayed, when you thought it couldn't possibly yield another to your dread of intimacy turned to ecstasy, like some wicked magic performed before your unprepared eyes. You receive her, though, at first with wonder, then astonishment, then grace, until you are forced to shut your bewildered eyes to her winding roads and coastal towns. You attended school at the oldest women's college in the country, your undergraduate degree in women's sorrows and histories. You learned how to take notes and not believe their stories were yours. Now the stippled thought of Massachusetts' smile unhinges you to some other degree of grief, a double-fisted type masquerading as a hard, unearned truce. Today is Buy Nothing Day, a blustery economic boycott, and you are doing your best to keep your wallet shuttered like your mouth, to keep what you want at bay for just this one day until you drive away to Connecticut, the state where your earliest loves blossomed unannounced, like bruises appearing in the shadows of all your knees skinned and fresh cuts, sirens trying to call for you, like all of Sappho's stunning allure, like all those lost weekends in Massachusetts, tossed copper pennies falling to the fountain's oceanic floor. Well, everyone, keep tossing your pennies to whatever fountains you can find in these times, and keep writing all your beautiful, beautiful poems. I want to thank our poets, our featured poets for today, Lynn McGee, Barbara Ungar, and Sarah Giragosian. An absolutely radiant display of poetry, again, I go back to, I love Sarah's presses. The literature of human ecology is what your press's moniker is. It was a beautiful display today of this triumvirate of the literature of human ecology. I also want to thank our hosts for West East Bicoastal Poets of the Pandemic and Beyond.
Thank you.
Grand host and featured reader, Lynn McGee, Susana H. Case, Carolyne Wright, and I'm Sandy Yannone, a little too boisterous for my own good today. I hope you will recover from this reading, my boisterousness, and decide to join us again. Our next reading will be, they're always the second Sunday of July. Saturday. It's Saturday. Yeah, Saturday. Every other month. So next time it will be July 12th, I believe.
Right.
Hope you will.
And we have Melinda Wilson and Lilo Way and Alice Ostriker.
Alicia Ostriker.
Alicia.
Yes, yes.
Alicia
She's so
Ostriker,
amazing.
who wrote the groundbreaking book of essays among bazillion books of poetry,
Mhm.
book Stealing the Language.
Language, yes.
Stealing the Language, an icon
Mhm.
in poetics.
Right.
So I hope you'll mark your calendars and join us.
And she has been woke since generations before that word even was used as an insult.
I'm going to stop the recording now. Is that okay with everyone?
Mhm.
Okay.
Thank you, Lynn.